there. Welcome to Heal Your Shadow Relationships. I am your host, Neola Sparkus, and I am here today with the brilliant and talented Debi Berndt and Dr. Robert Maldonado. They are the co-founders of Creative Love, helping people to have more fulfilling relationships and express their true purpose in life, too. Dr. Robert Maldonado is recognized internationally as a human behavior and relationship expert. He earned a PhD in counseling psychology and has had a lifelong interest in Jungian psychology, including the study of dreams, mythology, comparative religion, all things that I really love. And Debi is the author of the best-selling book, Let Love In, Open Your Heart and Mind to Attract Your Ideal Partner. Debi's been featured on ABC News, ABC Radio, Fox News, NBC News, Cosmopolitan, Natural Health, Playboy Radio. I could go on with your credits. And she has extensive training in clinical hypnotherapy, dream work, visualization, and as well as decades of practice in Eastern philosophy, meditation, and higher consciousness. So this is truly what I love, is you've got the perfect balance of science, psychology, and metaphysics, spirituality, and that is definitely right up my alley. So welcome to you two.
Thank you, Neil. It's great to be here, and we love your work. We love what you're doing. Big fans.
Thank you so much. So I guess because we're talking about shadow relationships, let's start with your definition. All my experts had a different perspective on what is a shadow relationship. So tell me, what is your definition for that phrase?
I'll let you go.
Yeah.
The doctor will explain.
Yeah, to put it in simple terms and in brief. You know, when we started doing our work, we decided to do a coaching model instead of a therapeutic model, which means that we wanted to use Jungian psychology as transformative psychology. And we wanted to make it accessible to people everywhere and in every walk of life. And the way we apply the shadow work is basically that we see the individual as already whole. There's nothing really broken about them and nothing that really needs fixing. We simply see it as an expansion of consciousness. That is, we're making the unconscious conscious again. And through the process of creative shadow work, we help them uncover the roots of their personal unconscious. So what that means is that as we create our persona, our mask that we wear in order to interact socially with other people, everything we deny about ourselves that is not in alignment with that mask becomes part of the shadow. It becomes rejected, repressed, etc., etc. If we leave that part unexamined, it will dictate the way we relate to others. So a lot of our work, of course, is in relationships. So for relationships, that's really important. If that part of the psyche is left unexamined, the person is essentially projecting their unconscious content onto the beloved, the other person. When we examine that part of our psyche, then we are able to free our mind from its influence, from the shadow influence. So it's a liberating process, really, and it's a transformative process that people go through, and it really changes their lives and the way they relate to others.
Oh, absolutely. Did you want to add anything to that, Debi?
Well, it's almost like the result of doing shadow work is really to understand your true nature versus the programming and the things that happened to you and why you pushed some things and denied some things because of social pressure and family pressure and cultural pressure. And then you also see your beloved in his or her true nature. and you're not projecting all these judgments and things on them, and you're actually really being in seeing them for who they truly are. And that's really what we call a divine relationship. And we find that so many people get divorced or don't even get kicked started in a relationship. Things fall apart too soon because they're projecting, and they're not understanding that what they're seeing is themselves in that reflection. And by retrieving that projection, and actually it's a beautiful thing to see it in yourself, that your true nature, which is beyond the programming, like who you were on a deep level, who you are. And that's where really true love is. It's not about infatuation and getting excited over someone, like the knight in shining armor. It's more about a deeper love.
Well, I love that you say that about a deeper love, and I also love that you said that there's nothing about us to fix. It's we go through our lives, in this case, looking for a relationship or trying to relate well with the partner we already have, and we bump up against emotional triggers and things that really feel very unpleasant, or we're not getting our needs met, and it feels like something's wrong, and then you're starting to look for something to fix. But in this model where there's nothing to fix, how do you treat something that comes up that feels like it's a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we see those problems and the triggers as opportunities, because they're really showing us the way to access an otherwise invisible part of our psyche. And so they're really giving us a gift. When we make that shift, when we start to see things as they truly are, which is full of possibility, then the person starts to, their whole life kind of starts to make sense, because they're not bumping up against these problems to solve, or these
or avoiding the problems,
or trying simply to avoid the issues. They move towards them, or we help them move towards those things. And the incredible thing is that when people move towards those fears and those triggers, it leads them directly to what they need to understand about themselves, and gives them a fuller sense of themselves.
That is such a positive way of framing it. What did you want to say, Debbie?
Oh, I was saying when we're in our normal life, if you haven't examined the shadow, you're just reacting to the external influences, and your reactions are limited by what you created by the programming in the past, the shadow parts. And there's a lot of people that talk about shadow being this dark, bad part of us, but Jung even said that the biggest parts of our shadow are all our beautiful light and all our gifts and the things that we denied, of the good parts of us, and not to put it in a positive or negative, but these wonderful parts of us that we've denied as well. And so we want to tell people that this isn't like a scary process, where you're going to have to look at the skeletons in the closet. Basically, it's liberating, because you're no longer controlled by that conditioned reaction. The Pavlov's dog. You just start, you kick in that trigger, the emotional triggers. You're actually free to choose, and it's really brilliant, because if you don't, you're going to be led by your unconscious, and like we hear Jung say all the time, it's going to direct your life. And all we want to do is become more conscious of what we don't know, and that's the process.
That is the process, and that can be a tall order for some people as well. You talked about being able to not run away from whatever is in front of you. And myself, being human, I have not known that I was running away at times. How do you help somebody that can't see it? I mean, if it's unconscious, we can't see it, right? And if we don't know we're running away, and we don't know that there's something more to be conscious of, how do you help people to, or how can somebody do it for themselves to be able to see what they can't see?
Yes, fortunately, the shadow work, the way we apply it, is only the beginning of what we call the individuation process, or what Jung called the individuation process. that is the process of becoming yourself. So there is an innate drive in every human to face their fears, to undergo that transformation already. So all we're doing is kind of reawakening and refocusing their mind on that process, that internal process that's already happening, really. And when we focus on it, when the individual focuses on it, it activates it in a much larger way to where it transforms the personality. We use dream work, we use visualization, of course, in order to speak back to the unconscious. And of course, when we say the unconscious, we're not talking about just the personal unconscious, which kind of is part of the shadow, or the shadow is part of that, but the deeper collective unconscious, which is really a much larger intelligence, right? That we're operating in, and that we have access to if we look inward and we take that internal journey.
And it's much bigger than any little emotional trigger. There's a force within us that's so much more powerful. And to one of the things that we help our clients do, and people that do our work, is to tap into that higher consciousness, to find their words for it, their connect to it in some way, and know that that's inside of them, that it's not outside. And that helps them with the process. And also, a lot of people are, when it's up for them and it's the shadow's ready to be revealed, you notice that there's people, and everyone that's listening had a moment in their life where everything felt like it was falling apart, and everything is kind of like, nothing's working, everyone's getting mad at you, and people are getting divorced and families breaking up and all these things. And it's just, sometimes it gets to that critical point where you have no choice and you have to face it, and so you don't want to wait till that happens. But a lot of times when those things happen, the dark night of the soul, you get to have that opportunity to be reborn again. And sometimes for a lot of people, it has to get to that critical point. For me, I was single till I was 41. So I got to that, I'm 40, I'm never going to meet anyone, I'm going to be alone forever. And so I had to kind of, there's I knew that there was a great love out there for me. I just didn't know how to get it. And so that's how this shadow work found me, is just really kind of butting up against everything that was in the way, and being able to willing to move toward it instead of run.
So I'd love to know, what is the purpose of the shadow if we have to go through life trying to see beyond it and become conscious of it? Why is it in place in the first place? I mean, what is there a good reason that we have a shadow? I understand it forms in childhood. Speak to why do we have to have this, and why do we have to go through this process?
Yes, that's a really great question, right? Because when we look at why, or when we ask why do we need to undergo this internal journey, um, I think a lot of it is simply the way human beings evolved. If you look at the way we experience our sensory world, we need to survive in this rough world. And it is initially about survival. If we do not survive, there's no way we can undergo a spiritual journey. Essentially, the game would be up and it would be over. So we need to survive first of all. And to survive, we need to create a very powerful ego mind that instructs us and keeps us safe in the world and shows us how to survive. The 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 shadow side of the conscious mind, or the ego mind, is that shadow, because in constructing an ego I, that sense of I, and that drive to survive, that I will survive, I have to reject certain elements, and I have to define myself as a separate entity from others, from the clan, from the world, from animals, from other things in the world. that defining, that process of defining this is who I am, creates the shadow. Because whenever we operate in duality, when I define good, I'm defining bad somehow, automatically. So it creates that dual nature, and it splits the mind in these two halves, the ego mind and the shadow mind. The process of integration then is that process of individuation. It merges them again, and then in merging those two elements, then we transcend that ego survival mind, and we're able to experience ourselves as the higher self, what Jung called the self. And we can think of the self as the totality of our conscious mind and our unconscious mind.
So you call the integration process individuation, which
Yes.
means, well, define that for me.
It is becoming the true self, your
Okay.
higher self.
Okay, I gotcha. And
I wanted
Debbie,
to add something too, and this is a natural process. I mean, if we didn't build up our ego when we were younger, you see kids that are teased a lot at school, and the bullying and everything, and a lot of them, they sadly, they do harm themselves, or they kind of go have these problems because they don't build their ego strong. So it is a way to survive. And every human being, goes through this idea of like, I have to survive first physically, and I have to survive in my family. I have to survive in the society and with my peers, and make money and all those things. But then around, a Jung had said around 35 years old is when you can start to individuate. You could start to, okay, I don't need to just survive anymore like an animal, right? We can actually become more conscious. And so this is why we don't look at what happened to us in our childhood as wrong. Like there's nothing wrong. Like it's the judgment of what happened that actually creates the shadow. And so we want people to feel empowered that no matter what happened to you or what didn't happen to you, this is a natural human process that we all go through. And some people never fully go through it. And some people, on their deathbed finally realize, oh, I've been protecting myself my whole life. Wish I would have taken more chances. I wish I would have really did what I loved. So we all have that in us, and it's a process. And that's why we have to go through it, because I think we need to build it. And then in that, having a strong ego actually enables us to go through the individuation. Because sometimes if your ego isn't strong enough, you're not going to have the power to face the shadow again.
yeah, well, I think you brought up some really important distinctions, especially this thing about survival. As long as we stay in a survival mode, we are going to feel defensive about the outside world, about the outside people, and sometimes people will go into a relationship in a defensive mode based on, I don't want to get hurt again, I don't want what happened to me in the past to happen to me again, and in that sense they kind of sabotage their abilities to create a good, healthy relationship going in with that survival, that defensive mode. So I know that the two of you do a lot of different classes, a lot of different events. I wonder if you can give us some examples with some clients, like examples of what their shadow maybe looked like, how you helped them through it, what was their experience after they came through it. Can you talk us through a little bit of what that looks like?
Absolutely.
Well, I could, this is a very common, this isn't one client, this is actually, I see this a lot with women, is, some people are, well, to see your shadow, you can look directly at the people you're attracted to, because they're really a reflection of you and what triggers you about them. And so a client would come to me and say, this person isn't open, or they won't commit, or they're wishy-washy, or they won't communicate with me, and they won't. I see a lot of people that use texting. The guys text them and don't pick up the phone and call, and so this happens a lot through what I see. And I think the technology, you can blame it on that it's much easier to text and have this internet relationship online before you meet and all those things. But they they tend to project that it's the guy's fault. It's their problem. They're the ones who don't want to commit. And
Yes.
so we have them go back and look at what's happening, in them and where they're stopping. And most of the time, it leads back to where they use their defenses against letting them in. Some people use humor as a defense. It's no big deal. And when it comes to talking about their feelings, they'll joke around about it. I know I've used that before. That's my whole family. And you typically, the shadow, the ego defends the shadow, and you can see defenses as what you do as your kind of armor. So you use or you project and blame.
Mm.
And so we have them go in and say, where are you unavailable? Where are you not committing? And there's a deeper process. I'm kind of using a general example, but a lot of times they would look at the shadow and face the fear of, like, what if they did reject you? What if they did not, if you opened up your heart and communicated and said, I really want to have a relationship with you, or I really want to get closer. Where do you stop? Where's the fear? And then we have them basically, I call it, what do we say, going toward it? Sitting with the fear, which is not everyone else wants to heal it and wants to, release it and all these things. And what we want to do is have them face it and sit with it. What if that person rejected me? Like, you really get present to it. And what we realize, and they realize, is that inside of that fear of rejection, and if they really just sit with it, that feeling, there's really nothing there. It's this idea that they built up that if they reject me, then everything's going to fall apart and I'm never going to meet anyone. And the mind just wraps itself around it. But if they sit it, it's kind of like unwrapping a gift. You sit with it and you just go toward it and be like, what is inside of it? Let go of the judgment on the feeling. Let go of the judgment if they reject you, what that means about you. It's all about you're preserving yourself and making stuff you're okay. And just, what if that person just wasn't interested? And then what happens is it frees them. And they realize that this other person, why are they the judge of me? They start to kind of really start examining that piece, and they realize that they're the ones who've been unavailable because they've been afraid, of this thing. And so when you're not afraid of something anymore, there's no need to defend it. And so what it happens is their heart opens and they start to really feel like invincible. Like, they feel like they can be themselves on a date or when they're dating with someone and ask for what they want without walking on eggshells, because that fear, that shadow fear, isn't driving them anymore
Yeah.
and making the decisions for them. And they're not even conscious of why they're doing it, because it makes sense, right? The dating rules will tell you, don't ask for what you want, and act cool, act like you don't care. And so it's they get confused as to how do I be with this person? How do I win their heart? And instead of focusing on, what do I want? What experience do I want in a relationship? And they start to see that every relationship they've had and attracted had the same elements because it was inside of them. And you changed your piece of the puzzle, you attract someone who also has an open heart and is not afraid of saying, yes, I want a relationship. I want to get close to you. I want to share our emotions. And so you have all the power. Everyone, men or women, have the power to really have that great relationship if you look inside.
And that's what you're talking about, becoming your true self.
Yes.
The self that you are without the defense mechanisms, the process of individuation. Dr. Robert, did you want to give an example of something typical of men that they bring to relationships that, kind of gets in their way of being able to have true open intimacy?
Absolutely. I think for us men, the emotional component is the difficult piece for us. And if we think about the Jungian psyche, what he was saying is that we need to get in touch with our own inner feminine principle, which he called the anima. We call her the inner Eve. When a man gets in touch with his inner Eve and creates a relationship, and the inner Eve is really a personification of the collective unconscious. It's the way the psyche allows us to relate at a very personal level to that universal element. Because otherwise it would be too abstract, right? This universal unconscious or this collective unconscious is vast. It's like the great ocean. But when it shows up as an archetype, as this inner Eve, we're able to create a very intimate relationship with her. In art, we know her as the muse. When an artist has a muse, he's able to transmit a lot of the content that's coming from the collective unconscious and channel it into art, into an art form, either literature or painting or sculpture. In our personal relationships, when we connect with that inner Eve, then we are touching our soul, basically, our inner emotional component that allows us then to relate to a woman instead of projecting our need for emotions onto them. So before we do the shadow work, what we're doing is we're expecting the woman to fulfill the emotional part for us. We're saying, here, you do the emotional work and you bring the emotions to the relationship and leave me out of it.
And we don't want to talk. We don't want to discuss it.
Right.
Don't talk to me about that touchy-feely stuff, right? That's your job.
Yes. But when we're in touch with it as individuals, when we do our shadow work, our individuation process, then we come complete already. We're whole, and we are relating in that way, in a complete way, instead of that partial projective way.
Well, this makes so much sense to me. When you say that a man has to get in touch with his inner Eve, what you're saying is to get in touch with their own emotional expression. And,
That's right.
And would you give them exercises like teaching them how to verbalize what they feel? I know that can be tough for a lot of guys.
No, our work is really a bit deeper. We go into how do you get in touch with the unconscious mind, right? Because it's a natural process in us, and we have this great capacity to understand and relate to the unconscious mind. What's happening is we're creating a dialogue between our conscious mind and the deeper collective unconscious.
Okay.
And it's very much like a relationship. When there's really true communication within those two components, then the person is able to relate in a natural way to the external world because they're not projecting, they're not expecting things to come from out there. They're already bringing the love and the relatedness with them, essentially.
And a practical way to what we do is visualization. We have them kind of imagine what their inner Eve would look like, that image of the inner Eve. And they go in and dialogue, communicate, start building that inner relationship. And then she starts showing up in his dreams. And how he interacts with her, if she's, the witch or, this dark woman with the cat, or is she loving, or is she too nurturing? Is she too this? And then it shows like really where his default, how he relates to women. And I love what you say about this inner Adam, inner Eve, is because the women have an inner Adam, is that it shows our readiness for to respond to the opposite sex. So if it's unexamined, it's just the default, like, of course, we can go all into this, it's beyond the shadow, but it's the father and mother, first of all, and then the women in your life. And for men, it's all that collective energy of his experience, his personal experience, plus there's the collective experience. And so when we do the visualizations and the dreams, they start to see, well, what's really unconscious that's, not helping me attract the right person or relate to the woman in the right way. And the dreams and the visualizations give you so much information because it's a visual language. And sometimes you have a dialogue, and sometimes it's very symbolic. And, picture's worth 1,000 words. So you really get a lot of information that you wouldn't get from just having a communication with your partner. You're actually going in and having a deeper conversation with a greater part of you that's
Yes.
amazing.
Well,
And she brings more than just a relationship. She brings creativity and inspires the man to in his career. Just like a woman, the inner Adam brings. She brings to the woman that feeling of support and connectedness. So whatever she creates on a conscious level as a feminine, the force or the spirit of the inner Adam is like the support. And women are always like the modern woman doesn't has a hard time receiving, so it's about building that receiving piece with the inner Adam. So it's a beautiful thing, and we always think your inner Adam and his inner Eve is going to kind of connect, and so wherever they are, you're going to have chemistry with that person. And so a couple that had already met can actually work on their inner Adam and inner Eve separately, and then together they can get closer in a relationship because they'll stop projecting, and of course the shadow work comes first, but we're getting in deeper than we thought.
This all sounds so beautiful. I'm getting such an amazing visual. And I understand why you're calling it creative love. And I'm going to sum it up and say, the two of you have opened up such a vast inner world through psychology, through Jungian work, through hypnotherapy. And the idea is you create your deep, intimate relationship with all the aspects of yourself. And then the other stuff on the outer world is going to take care of itself.
Yes.
Because you already have cultivated how to create a relationship, how to create a loving relationship, how to accept all sides of yourself, and then bring that to the party, so to speak, and that will create the magnetism and the attraction for somebody who is also that open and that healthy in their, I should call it whole in their ability to create relationships. So this has been just a fabulous half hour. I so appreciate all the wisdom that you bring and all your wonderful teachings.